So, good evening. I went about today and I got this thing here taken apart, and we're going to take a look at this here in a minute. There's really not much to it. I just wanted to fill you in on one more thing. This afternoon, I had a chance and I cleaned my unit out in my car, and I just sprayed some brake cleaner in there, and it was pretty gunked up. And the little straw from the brake cleaner basically blew it out, and then you could see the smoke coming out from the brake cleaner going into the running engine. And then I hooked up the vacuum tester while the engine was running, and you're gonna have 13 to 15 inch mercury at about 650 RPM on here. And then I simulated a vacuum leak by squeezing that multi-port connector hose, which goes to each one of the fuel injectors. I did it on the closest one to this here, which was cylinder number 7, because that hose I got came from Pelican Parts. I had ordered only one, and I had ordered that more or less by accident. It's an MB part, but I ordered it from Pelican Parts. And when it came in, I looked at this and I said, I'm not sure if I'm going to install that, because the manufacturing date was 2002 or 2005. And sure enough, because the way that hose sits in there, I'm going to make another video about this. It started to leak where it attaches to the fuel injector cup on that port when you push it back, because they're connected to the other hose, and it tends to push that hose back, and it provides an opening in that direction. And if you push it any further, you can hear the air going bypassing, and then the vacuum here will drop down to about 10-11 inch mercury. So you can see this if you're not measuring 13 to 15 at your idle speed here. Then the vacuum will drop down to 10, 11. That means that one of your injector connections is bad. That is that hose, the connector hose, what they call that, which has the 4, how should I call them, port adapters, where you plug into the injector ports for your vacuum in it. And one of them is leaking. If it is even less than that, then you're gonna have multiple leaks there. But that's an easy way to test, by just taking the breather hose off, make sure it's clear, and hook up the vacuum tester here. Then you can see this. I just wanted to throw that in. Normal 13 to 15, with the average being about 14 inch mercury. And with a leak, you're going to drop down, and that's how you know you're going to have a leak there. Real simple to test. No, you don't have to blow smoke in or anything. But this will tell you on how good the system actually is with your hoses. Now to this puppy here. Now this was an eBay purchase I did, and I think I paid $125 for this. And I probably shouldn't have bought this, because you can see, we're going to do our zoom thing is. This is how I actually got this thing. And you can see this plate here is completely fried. I mean, this is the part which goes in here. You can see this here too. This sits against this part here. This is where it closes itself off. And we can see it probably still seals, but this is probably the worst unit I've seen. And this was the one we got, we couldn't get going. Just you can get a close-up here on how this actually looks like it. The assembly itself, the spring was bent. This is what the spring actually looks like it. And you can see this whole thing is sure not that well anymore. It hadn't been opened. And the way this thing actually sits in there is just like this here. And you can see this. And if there's any dirt in there, then you can imagine. The other thing is, what also surprised me is the amount of play this has. See this? I don't know if that is really that worn out or not. This is the inside. You can see this. You can see marks in there. And you can see that this unit is not that well anymore. And this is the part which sits in here. And this is the part which you can pull out by putting the screw in here in this thread. And that will basically position this here further in or further out. So this will give you your overall tension on where this closes. It moves the whole thing up in relationship. And this will allow for the reduced current to close it. What I was surprised is that the gasket itself is in a good shape. It is not broken at all. The way this actually sits in here is this is that ring. Let me zoom out a little bit, and we can see this a little bit better. This just sits in here like this. And then it has this plastic ring around here which broke, which was brittle, worn out. You can see this, that fits right in here. And like this. And then it just moves. And this has very little impact on the resistance itself. And you can see this, the actual pin here which moves is actually down here. So this sits in here like this, and then it is just coupled on here. And the outer housing sits on here like this. I had to cut this ring off, which usually fits in here. And that has a seal in here. And then a spacer, which goes over this like this. And then this will fit right in here. There is a mark here somewhere. Unfortunately, it came off. I believe it's set in here like this. Yeah, I think this is how this actually sits. Yep. So that's how that normally sits. So this unit is pretty much fully self-contained, and there is no concern that there's any water, anything going in here. These things probably will outlast it. This is also where all the weight is. But the primary mechanism is this part here. Now, I'm not quite sure exactly. I guess they put this on here so nothing from the outside world can leak through here to the other side. And that seems to be running fine. What we can see on this unit here is score marks. Now I have to zoom all the way and let me see that I can show you this. You can see the marks on that shaft, and this is where this gets hung up, and that's where the resistance increases, and that will change with heat. Because when this part here, which is basically brass, gets warm, you know, from the engine temperature, you can see how different the color is from the part where it was basically fixed in. It basically goes in just from the inside here. You would basically have to use a tool, and you set this in so it comes out of this thing here, right here. And you can see this is the default position here, whoops, here, where it changes the color. So that's where it's set all of its life, and the rest of it is all exposed. You can see that really well. And of course the shaft here too, you know, you can see how this fits. It wobbles quite a bit, so it has some play. And then if it is going crooked, then you have quite some resistance. Any dirt in this, any heat, then that's it. So this here, actually, the carbon deposit on this plastic part, you can see it really doesn't do anything because it is not holding anything up. The critical part is this here, the free movement of this shaft inside this adjuster and the spring. I'm not quite sure if the spring deteriorates over time or not. This spring here looks like it has quite some resistance to it. Oops, that's this way. It just simply sits in like this. And interestingly enough, it came out like this here, like it had been pulled apart at one point or another. So this is how this thing actually sits in here. And you can see it. You have to apply quite some force to it. And I can feel this, you see. Now, the cluck noise, what you can make with this, is when this shaft here, which is only sitting in here loose, there's nothing in here. You can hear this. That's the knack noise. And this is always working. So the only time it won't work is when this thing is stuck. It's stuck in here a little bit. And like I said, this just sits in basically like this here. And it just attaches like this to this here. So when you hear this, then you know that this is actually in the correct position. And probably a little bit out, and allows this thing here room enough to shake it. That's the only time you can hear this. I'm not quite sure. I have not been able to actually separate this out, but you can see that this rubber, even though this disc here is completely gone, is still pretty good. So I don't think that they go bad. But like I said, is they seal this here off from the outside world. There's really nothing to it, except that that ring broke, and that was probably because it is plastic and it is dried out. You can see the marks on this here too, on how this is eaten up. I think that the previous owner tried to clean this, and he may have used acetone, and the acetone, of course, doesn't clean well, but acetone will dissolve the plastic, and that's sort of what this looks like it here to me. So this is basically the assembled part. You can see this how this is worn out really. So this is really a one-way thing here. So this thing is garbage. I spent $128. And I probably should have returned it, but then I figured this is an ideal unit. Once I got it, I left the guy positive feedback, just to maintain the peace here. But I said, well, we're probably never going to get another unit, because you sure don't want to take a good one, working one, apart to take a look at this, This in itself comes out really easy, because all it is, you go in with the screwdriver and you pry this out a little bit, and then this whole thing just pops out. And if you have another one, a good one, you could put this on a bad coil, just put this back in with the O-ring and the washer, and then just tap this back into, carefully tap it back in, and then it will be okay. And then you can replace the coil. This coil here is perfectly fine, and we clean the contacts up. You see, the shaft itself is moving absolutely freely in there, so this has no issues whatsoever. The issues really are coming from the just this part here, and it is primarily this here to this here with a spring mechanism, and that's why you have to adjust the older ones and release some of that spring tension, and then that will compensate for the poor movement and worn out status. This way you can prolong the life of those, or overcome certain issues, because what will happen with this here is that it jams when it is warm, and then you're going to have a higher idle than when you have a cold idle. This could be quite a problem too. The cleaning really doesn't do much. The thing is to lubricate this part here, to get as much rust remover and lubrication in here so this moves freely. If this stuff is dirty, this is not really a big deal. I mean, you will probably want to get some of the stuff out, so you have the cavity clean out and everything else. You can see this looks pretty good actually as a housing, and you can see this how well machined this actually is. This is basically the edge, and that plate pushes against this, so this whole assembly goes together like this, and then you're trying to match this up here, see, and then you can push this in. And there it is. That's how this basically sits in there. And with that, you can adjust the whole thing. So I'm going to put the spring on here. Let's see if I can do, yeah. So, and you can see this now. If you were to pull this out, further out, then this will move already further back in. And then it works. That's pretty much the whole thing with this there. There's not much more to it. I don't have a screw to get this back out. I do. Let me see. Well, that's kind of what I wanted to show you. I got a screw here I'm trying to get out. And out it came. It just pushes itself out. See, it sits pretty tight in there. If you push this up and down too much, this cast material will wear out and this won't hold anymore. You probably could epoxy this then into place, but you shouldn't want to get any epoxy onto the shaft thing here. And, well, there you got it. There you got it, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, I'm going to make another video of these hose issues I had there with the dried out stuff from Pelican Parts, which sat on the shelf. Well, that was made in 2005. I bought it in the beginning, December last year. So it was 20 to 15 years on the shelf in some warehouse, which was only partially from Mercedes-Benz. They bought it probably years ago, and it sat there, and it didn't turn out that well. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. I suggest that you, if you want to be updated, because sometimes I add things in new videos, like we're talking about something here I did in the other videos, and then sometimes I forget something. I'm getting old and I can't remember everything. And then I say afterwards, a day later, so I say, gee whiz, that would have been nice. I should have probably mentioned this or the other thing. And then I mention it in the next video. And if you have not subscribed and you don't know, then you may miss an update or, some addendum from the previous videos, like I did with this one here to tell you about how much vacuum you got. So the people who are subscribed and who are watching this now, you got the update on it. So that's why that is, because it's kind of a educational channel here primarily. So you can get the updates in case I forgot something here. You never know. With that, you have a great evening.